What if Deku was a firewolf, part 3? Now, before I get into this, I have to point out something in the video that I previously just made. What if Deku was a warlock from Destiny? At the point where I said that Izuku went to the bathroom admiring himself, he balled up a fist and opened it up again, and a wolf came out floating above his hand. I meant to say his ghost. So now I'm getting my stories mixed up. I'm sorry, I just had to point that out. So without any further ado, this is What If Deku Was a Firewolf, Part 3. One night, Izuku was sleeping and having a flashback. Back in December, there was snow on the ground, and the sun was shining in the reflection of the snow. It was like the light from the snow was emanating by itself. Izuku was walking around patrolling, wearing warm clothes, when Izuku spotted a father and a son with a hunting rifle walking around. Izuku stayed out of sight and took to the trees as a hiding spot. Izuku was watching them closely. The father then looks down the scope and gives it to his son. Izuku uses his wolf sight to look where the father was looking. It was an elk that Izuku has never met before. Izuku already knew what they were about to do. Sorry, lost spot. Izuku froze in place. Izuku had a flashback He had a flashback within a flashback. At a dream that he had when those 4 teenagers were harassing his wolf. He then goes back into his first flashback with the elk. This feeling, it's the same feeling I had within the dream. Izuku that I had before. I can't move because I'm scared. They have a gun, but Izuku looks at the elk and says in his mind, but I can't let them kill the elk. But Izuku then yells at the father and son to stop, but it's too late. The bullet flew and hit the elk directly in the chest. Izuku fell from the tree and hit rock bottom. Izuku then looked at the now deceased elk. The father then approached Izuku slowly, walking towards him, wondering if he's okay. But then, all of a sudden, Izuku bursted into flames. His clothing then caught on fire in some parts. That was covering Izuku. Izuku then began to burn away at his clothes, looking at the father, and then said, "You monster. How could you do that? He never hurt anyone. He was just out here looking for food, minding his own business. And you shot him." The flames around Izuku then began to grow. The father takes a step back out of fear. The son then walks over to his father and then shields him to protect him from Izuku. Izuku then sees this and notices he's losing control of his fire. Izuku looks at the father and then at the son, and he looks back at the father and yells, "Get out of here." The father then picks up his son and runs away, leaving the rifle behind. Izuku walks towards the dead elk and cries, saying, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." After a few minutes, he then walks back to where the gun was and uses the flames to melt it. I kind of lowered my voice there. Izuku then wakes up from his dream and sees his wolf facing the fire in a sitting position. The wolf then says, "You had a bad dream. It was about that elk you couldn't save, wasn't it?" Izuku then says, "If I wasn't scared, I could have saved him." The wolf then says, "There comes a time in everyone's life, Izuku. You won't be able to save everyone. There are going to be times where you're going to have to make a choice to save a life or your own. And knowing you'd save a life every time. But someday, Izuku, you'll have to make a choice to save a life or your own. If you do, or if you do end up saving a life, knowing that it'll cost you yours, there is no right or wrong answer. That's just how life is. Izuku then says, well, if I do end up dying trying to save a life, I can do it with a smile on my face. The wolf then lies down and sighs. Izuku then says, well, I'm going back to bed. Good night. Good night. The wolf then responds with good night. It's still dark, and about 2 miles away from Izuku's camp, the Yaoyorozu family is having a camping trip. It is 1 a.m., and everyone is getting tired. They all then head to their huts, well, in this case their tents, and sleep. The wind blows, and burning pieces of wood from the fire that they forgot to put out then begins a forest fire. A few minutes later, Izuku wakes up and smells something burning. He looks around and he knows that it's not him. He then says something is wrong. As he crawls out of his hut, he then looks to where the fire has begun that is heading towards Izuku's way. Izuku then says, I have to save all the animals. In that direction, Izuku uses his wolf speed and warns all the animals he comes across, from bears, birds, other wolves, squirrels, and cave animals as well. They all run, but Izuku is still heading towards the fire to see if anyone is in need of help. Izuku is getting closer and closer to the fire. He then jumps to the trees to get a higher ground to see from above. Izuku then sees a helicopter is flying over above while filming the forest fire. Izuku focuses to the matter at hand and continues his search for anyone who is in need of help. Izuku is about to end his search when he hears screaming. Izuku hears screaming for help. Izuku heads towards the sound and finds the family, the Yaoyorozu family. They are trapped between two big trees, blocking their way out. And at the same time, Kachan, the bear, is there, looking to escape as well. But he is also stuck with the Yaoyorozu family. The father then pulls out a rifle and aims it at Kachan, who is cornering himself out of fear. Izuku, still high above, sees this and has a flashback to where the hunters shot the elk. Izuku then says to himself, I was scared to move back then, but I'm not now. Izuku then jumps down from the tree and lands in between the family and Kachan. Izuku then walks up to the father, snatches the gun from him, and then melts the gun. He then walks towards the tree that was holding the family in place, using his wolf strength to push it out of the way. The father the Yaoyorozu family makes their way and tries to grab Izuku to take him to safety along with them. Izuku then says, I'm not leaving without him. Izuku walks towards Kachan as the family then leaves. Kachan is shocked about what is going on. He's scared to move, but Izuku persuades him to move along to escape. They both run, and trees are falling in their direction. While running, Kachan slips and falls. Izuku then comes back to him to help him up, and as Kachan was getting up, a tree is about to fall on both of them, but Izuku pushes Kachan out of the way, and the big tree falls on Izuku's, landing on his chest with only one free arm, while the rest of him was pinned down. Kachan sees this and tries to help get the tree off of Izuku, but to no avail. Izuku tells Kachan to run, leave him. But Kachan objects to this and says, no, I don't want to leave you, Izuku. Izuku then tells him to go find his mother. I'm sure she's worried sick about you. Izuku says this with a smile on his face. Kachan says, I'm sorry, Izuku. Izuku assures him that it's okay and to promise him that if he ever has cubs one day, he needs to name one of them after him. Kacchan then promises to do so and leaves Izuku alone. At Inko's home, she sees the news and she knows her son is in that forest. And she tries to call him, but Izuku left his phone at his campsite. Inko is crying, begging to God for her child to be safe. Bakugo and Shotaro are even watching the news as well, and they know that Izuku is in trouble. Izuku is exhausted. He used the last of his strength to move the big tree to save the family and Kacchan. Izuku feels like he's going to pass out from the lack of oxygen. The fire grows closer and closer to Izuku when his wolf walks from the flames towards Izuku, saying, "You did it. They're both saved." The wolf then looks down to Izuku with tears running down his snout and says, "I'm sorry, Izuku. I feel like I'm the one who put you here. I asked you to be a hero to the life that surrounds you, and now you're the one who needs saving." Izuku looks like he's about to pass out, ready to accept his fate. The wolf then says, "You have proven to me that you are worthy. I will be part of you again, body and soul. I will give you guidance and more." The wolf then walks into Izuku's body as if it was a ghost. Izuku's eyes slowly close and then widen. He feels a rush of energy flowing through him. Izuku then uses his one free arm to push the tree off of him. Izuku stands up and feels something he hasn't felt in a long time. He feels whole. He feels stronger. Izuku then says, "Okay, Wolfie, let's see what you can do." Izuku changes into a wolf and then flames on at the same time. Izuku jumps from tree to tree, beginning to absorb all the fire that surrounds him. Izuku notices the fire absorption, and he knows what he must do. He then begins to run through the forest, absorbing as much fire as he can. At the same time, Izuku begins to grow in size. The helicopter notices this. The news reporter on board films this. Inko is watching, and she already knows it's her son. So does Bakugo, Shoto, even Endeavor himself. The helicopter and the reporter on board tells the news crew about the fire is beginning to disappear. It seems like this wolf that is growing in size is taking care of it. Izuku continues to grow and grow, and is now a really big, gigantic wolf. He can be seen from miles around. Izuku then walks up on top of a mountain as all the fire that surrounded the forest begins to be absorbed by Izuku. Izuku then climbs to the top of the mountain and gives out a loud howl as the sun begins to rise over the horizon. His howl is loud that Inko can hear it from outside her window. Inko gets on her knees and cries, not only knowing that her son is safe, but he has found himself. Today is a new day. All the animals that Izuku saved sees him. Izuku, still in his firewolf form, then jumps off the mountain and shrinks down. Izuku goes to a river. I'm sorry, my dog's chew toy is driving me nuts. Izuku goes to a river and turns back into a man. Izuku then walks into the water and begins to cry of tears of joy. All the animals saw where Izuku went, and all of them all the animals saw where Izuku went and sees Izuku. They approach him, making sure he's okay. Even Kacchan and his mother were there. Kachan was happy to see that Izuku was alive. Kachan then says, Izuku, I saw your wolf. Was that you? I saw the wolf. Was that you? Yes, it was, said Izuku. Wow. So, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do now? Izuku then looks around to the animals and say, I have to go home now. All the animals are wondering what are they gonna do without him. Izuku then stands up tall and says an inspiring speech about how they all need to work together and to look after each other and to promise that he would visit them from time to time. The sun continues to rise as Izuku heads home to his mother. Okay, that one actually came out pretty good. Okay, so that was what I had so far of what if Deku was a firewolf. I'm currently working on the next part of what if Deku was a warlock. I'm trying my best to regain all my memories of Destiny. But like, hey, if you guys like this video, please give it a like. And if you have anything to say about the story, about how crappy it was, I'll take any kind of feedback. Please leave a comment down below. Anyway, you all have a nice day and consider yourselves #bless. Goodbye.